Aquarius rising, I'm sure you've heard a lot of hype and spin around Barbo's basket. This is what it looks like in a whole sign chart for Aquarius rising. Let's try to break down all the components one by one. I'm Sook Boy, you're awesome. Let's talk about it. Many of you have the opportunity to see your more important relationships as a mirror. In other words, you will be holding up a mirror to those more intimate one-to-one relationships, and they will be holding up a mirror to you. What people have you attracted into your lives, and what is the tension, the tense point, the thing that can't be said, or the underlying ominous power struggle that can never be resolved? Until now, what of these more important relationships are representing some kind of toxicity that you've normalized, where you've become too clingy, or they've become too clingy, and it is time for a little bit more independence? What are the power dynamics? What are the trust dynamics? What are the ego dynamics? Is one person coming across a lot more humanitarian and the other one coming across a lot more egotistical? Have you allowed yourself to disappear into someone else's story? This doesn't have to be a marriage or a girlfriend. Romantic, business, platonic, or otherwise. It could be you and a client, you and a contract, you and a power structure. Ideally, this is about your identity and what you're willing to communicate and what you're willing to stand or die on the hill for. And is there a clash or a collapse when you try to confront that with some of these more important relationships? Let's take a step back and nest this in context. Now, this Barbo basket is made up of generational planets and a social planet, meaning Jupiter. Now, this could mean that you actually observe this through a partner. This could be something that you observe through the collective zeitgeist. Okay, this is ultimately our relationship with technology, but for you in particular, and Leo rising, it's very much about your one-to-one relationships. Now, let's take the clock back to, it started before then, but let's take it back to around 2000. And this is when a generation of people that were birthed into the earth that don't know what life really feels like without access to the internet. Now, these people are 20-something, and as they age and gather more life experience, they'll become a lot more influential with the decisions they make, who they vote for, who they don't vote for, who they have faith and trust in spiritually, politically, financially, and who they don't, how they access information, what they can say, what they can't say, what they can spend their money on, and what they can't spend their money on. If you think about the turn of the century, all right, there was this conglomerate of people that thought you could sign up for a 9-to-5 job, work for an establishment, work for some kind of traditional industry potentially. You're basically sacrificing your time for their personal interest and their motivations. Now, we saw a splintering effect since then. Now you can move your personal brand online. And instead of being a slave to the clock, you can be a slave to the algorithm, funnily enough. Meaning there is a completely different worldview about how we operate. And this Barbo basket, for me, I think it means the ongoing or unfolding inner revolution and external revolution of when man meets machine. Pluto's been moving through your first house of identity, of your appearance, how you interface with people in real time. It's very instinctual. It's very deep. Sometimes it's ruthless. Sometimes transformation is formed via some kind of identity crisis, and therefore it's a crisis management over who you really are and how you show up. What's your first impression? What's the impression that you leave behind? What's your social persona? Slowly but surely, Pluto is dissolving or taking away, burning the lies away when it comes to who you are or who you thought you were. Jupiter has just entered your 7th house of Leo. I've already done a complete video on Jupiter in Leo for Aquarius rising if you want to go for a scroll. But this 7th house is about partnership, agreements, contracts, management, your confidence, their confidence, your optimism, their optimism, your ego, their ego, and what's getting in the way of actually making a mature bond, a committed bond where you both respect one another's spiritual, intellectual, and emotional sovereignty. This can include, being a bit more performative, like being in a band or having some kind of creative collaboration, by the way. And now, are you at a phase in life where that is a possibility, that you actually want to have some kind of committed relationship and you want to glow up and actually build a family? The other flagship moment that I want to bring up is around 2007, 2008. And this is when we saw the establishment, the government, bail out the banks instead of the people. The banks got away with all this corruption, this trading that they were doing around real estate, and they didn't actually bail out their people. And since then, a lot of society has caved in or collapsed, if you haven't noticed. This is also when we saw the rise of digital currency. Again, this is always going to be about technology when we see Aquarius, Uranus involved. Just saying. But where I really want to start the clock for you and where you can start thinking about what's changed since or what kind of cycle you're in is around 2020. What were your beliefs? What relationships did you have? What confidence did you have? Who were you and how have you changed? Have you integrated different, more committed relationships into your life? Have you become more famous? Have you become more popular? Have you been attracted to, lead singers of bands and very performative, extroverted, outgoing people? And since then, are you now at a crossroads with some of these more important relationships and the psychological resistance you have or don't have when it comes to integrating technology into your identity, how you're using it, how you're relating to other people on social media, for example? And because Jupiter's involved and it's ruling your 11th house, like what are the broader communities that you're attached to? What's their philosophy? What's their cultural identity? What's their ideology? Did they become radicalized? Did you actually have to move away from them? Or did you become more radicalized in your beliefs? This is all up for question over the month of July. And as I said, since the start of 2020, we've gone through 6 years of this internal revolution for you potentially, and we have 6 years to go. So we're going to see something called the acceleration of techno-feudalism. Many of us will adopt the machines and will move everything online, and many of us will actually push back against the established order of what top-down power is imposing on us and be a bit more grassroots. Potentially we'll want to move to the country and actually separate ourselves from this technological revolution. And what does that have to do with your partnerships, funnily enough? Do you feel obligated or controlled by your ideology or the ideology of your partnerships? Romantic, business, platonic, or otherwise. This can be entire communities and friendship groups, by the way. And because Jupiter is ruling your 6th house of finances, are you financially independent enough? Does your livelihood completely rely on technology? Are you in the game? Are you a slave to the algorithm yourself? And are your relationships ultimately supporting your growth? Do they want to see you win? Now, this opposition between Jupiter and Pluto often is some kind of power struggle, some kind of issue with trust or control, or someone wanting a future, someone just wanting the spotlight, someone wanting the attention, someone thinking of the whole community as a collective. An individual, say a king, versus the plight or ideology of the collective, generally speaking. Is there some kind of political, ideological clash between some of you in your more important relationships? Now, from this opposition, that forms the charge. That's where the tension is. And this is the crisis point that you're going to move through. Again, this is not an isolated event. This has been building for some time. And for some of you, it's going to be a really successful relationship or successful period in your life where you're forced to do something quite profound. For others, whatever's been going on in the last 6 years, you might actually fall off the wagon and you'll be asked to start again. But keep in mind that because these are generational planets, this is not something that could happen to you personally. You could witness this in other people's lives or the cultural zeitgeist, generally speaking. But yes, from this charge between Jupiter and Pluto, we have relieving trines and sextiles down to Uranus in your 5th house of children and creative outlets, passion projects, and also Neptune, where Saturn is also co-present in your 3rd house of Aries, which is all about the settings of your mind, how you communicate, your relationship with siblings, your locality, your neighborhood, your neighbors, your car, short distance travel, for example. Now, the Uranus in the 5th house of children is what I'm talking about when there's potentially a pivot around the idea of children and what children mean to you. Also, it's about being a lot more experimental, open-minded, and ruthlessly curious about what really makes you happy, what you really want to learn about to enrich or indulge yourself in what you find pleasurable. How do you find joy in your life? Is this something you and your partner actually indulge in? What are the logistics around your creative passion projects that you share with one another? This can also mean, because of Uranus in the 5th house, and that's about situationships and love life, you could be very experimental with your sex life in this time, by the way. Or there could be a lot of flash in the pan relationships that kind of fizzle out, don't go anywhere, but all the same are extremely intense. Now, the other aspect is Neptune and Saturn kinda in this 3rd house of Aries. And this is actually changing your spiritual autonomy, sovereignty, intellectual framework. What are your beliefs? What have you normalized about how you speak to yourself and how you speak to others? Is this a time when you wake up to the fact that you've put your partner on some kind of pedestal, you've idealized them in some way, or vice versa? Now, as a thank you for watching this entire video, please feel free to send me a DM. I'll send you a coupon code for $30 Australian off my complete natal and birth chart readings. Again, this is a very broad overview. I hope that helps,